Hi and welcome. My name is Derek Feldman, and I'm joined today by my co-author, Carrie Sertosky, and we're excited to have you on our media preview for the new book that we have written with published by Josie Bass called "Cause for Change: The Why and How of Nonprofit Millennial Engagement." And we'll spend roughly the first 25 minutes discussing a little bit about the book and some of the major concepts. And then we'll spend the last 5 to 10 minutes talking about an upcoming event that will take place called MCon that we'll also be at, and we'll also start to highlight some bigger millennial engagement pieces. Before I turn it over to Carrie, I wanted to say a few things and sort of set the stage in the context about the book and how we got to this place, because it's actually been a little bit and it's been a little while. After the last 4 years, myself and I lead a company called Achieve, and my co-author Carrie Sertosky, she'll fill you in on her background with formerly with the Case Foundation and the Social Citizens Initiative. We both have started and over the last 4 years really come together in thinking about how can we help the nonprofit sector really try to understand what's happening with millennials, and at the same time try to at least create the fundamentals and the foundation for organizations when creating millennial engagement programs. And as we started to not only speak around the country around the concepts and things that we're finding out from our work, Achieve's work with the Millennial Impact Project and research, and Carrie's work formerly with the Case Foundation and Social Citizens, we realized this is a great opportunity now to sort of put all of our thoughts into a book and help really the field, not only just organizations, but even corporations, understand how they can get their employees to workers to constituents involved in cause engagement. And so it's been a work in progress, I would say, over the last several years as Carrie and I develop the concepts that we present here today to you. And as Carrie and I, and she'll probably fill you in a little bit more too, that we see this as an ongoing discussion that will require not only discussion, but experimentation. Because the generation is adapting so quick, because there's so many advances in activism and engagement, that the strategies we're presenting here are the fundamentals, and we'll continue to build upon those, and we hope to share those with you on our website and in also the different types of learning environments that we do through MCon and other types of programs. So we're excited that you'll be with us. By the way, we're taping this, so if you need to come back to anything, you'll be able to do that. And also we'll share with you some of the resources, how to get the book, and some media advances too as well. So this time I want to really turn it over to my co-author here, Carrie, who's going to bring you through the book and some of the major key pieces that we discuss in the book for organizations to do. Carrie?
Great. Thanks, Derek, and good morning, everybody. Derek and I are thrilled to be able to provide you with a sneak peek here at Cause for Change this morning. And, I think as Derek alluded to, we want to provide you some background on why and how we developed this book, who we're hoping to reach, and really ultimately how we hope to influence the public dialogue within both the nonprofit sector, but also beyond it when it comes to how organizations and institutions are engaging with this rising generation of millennials. For us, we really hope that people don't just see this as another book about the millennial generation. We think much has been written about our generation, and we think there are a couple of things that set this book apart. First of all, Derek and I, as we're quick to note in the opening chapters, we're both millennials ourselves. We are cuspers. We fall on the cusp between Gen X and Gen Y, but for all practical purposes, we are millennials, and the perspectives and the stories that we've woven throughout the chapters are drawn, largely from some of our own experiences, some of the work that we have done in the social sector over the past 10 plus years. While there has been a lot that's been written about the generation, not as much has been written about us by us, and so we hope to offer organizations a clear and a practical guide, for all of those who are trying to make sense of our generation. And it seems that millennials, just as those generations that came before ours, are in many ways falling victim to criticism about how we work, how we live, how we make decisions, and of course, how we engage in social change. And for all of our critics, we're actually an optimistic generation. And I think that plays out in how we approach solving social problems. Um, for better or for worse, I think, some of the things we can agree upon is that millennials are wired to work differently, collaboratively, transparently, entrepreneurially, which is a horrible word to say. Just but it's very true. So I want to make sure we note that. But we the hard part here for organizations is that we make them work hard, not only for our attention and our limited attention, but also we make them work hard for our dollars and our time. And we actually don't think that that needs to be the case. Um, what we know is that in the coming decades, the organizations are really going to survive and thrive are those that are connecting with the next generation of supporters in a new way. And we think it's not. We don't think that this new way is particularly complex, but we do think it's going to take a shift in thinking and a shift in an organizational culture within institutions. It's the acceptance of things that we talk about throughout the chapters that I think we have up on the screen right now. But it's a shift in or an acceptance of open engagement and for relationship building and an understanding of how to creatively weave networks and leverage influencers. So, we're hopeful that the book is going to provide a practical guide for executive leadership, for boards of directors, for organizations that are trying or are grappling with this how to engage this next generation. And so, as you can see from the screen, the way that we set up the book is, we begin by setting the stage for who the millennials are, how societal events have shaped their approaches and their perspectives, and then we quickly move into an introduction about the millennial engagement strategy, which is a concept that we've kind of tried to weave throughout the book, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that entails later on in this presentation. We take a deeper dive in chapter 3 to how technology is influencing this generation. I think a lot of people are quick to always jump to technology, and we know that that is something that is changing, changing the way that we work and operate, but it's not the only thing. And so, chapters 4, focuses more on the influence of volunteer service and how how millennials are engaging in their communities. 5 is really focused more on peer influence, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. In chapter 6, we dive much more deeply into some of the research that Derek's shop, Achieve, has done over the last several years on millennial giving habits. And so that's, we talk a lot about donor strategies and how to engage millennials as donors. And then in chapter 7, we talk much more about how millennials are actually driving change within the workplace, and what organizational leaders need to do in order to embrace that. And then finally, we focus on a number of nonprofit leaders themselves and their unique characteristics and what makes that. So Derek is flipping through the slides, and one of the things that we were so pleased, my former boss, Jean Case, wrote the foreword for us, and we've pulled one of the quotes that she shared here. And so, Derek, if you can. If government or nonprofits aren't moving fast or being effective, they'll channel their efforts through corporations or communities. And if corporations and communities aren't working, they'll use their dollars, followers, and friends to demand change or to support those institutions that are making change happen on their terms. And I think that, this speaks to the notion that change is happening, and it's happening quickly, and it's not, social change is not just happening within the nonprofit sector, and it's going to take a blending of all sectors and different approaches in order to influence social change, and that's something that the millennial generation cares deeply about. So why are we doing this? uh, what we've seen and what we hope that the book focuses more deeply on is not just showing, uh, not just talking about millennials and their own, um, the approaches that they take, but really the influence that they have on systems and on organizations. And so this is, we want this to be less about just, the millennial generation as a demographic of people, but really how they're influencing social change in communities. And so this quote kind of speaks to that. Um, you know, Rather than perpetuate the creation of new institutions, what if we instead find new ways to get our institutions and millennials to mutually support one another? So something that's very important, and we think that, while this is taking an institutional, an organizational culture shift, that we need to really be thinking about how we're working across generations in order to influence that. It's not about you and your cause. It's about them using your organizations as a conduit to affect their cause, their issue, their value. So what I want to do is jump into some of the key trends that we talk about, some of the key messages. And the first of those is micro engagement. So millennials participate at micro levels before moving to highly involved states of action. So I think there's a question about, when doing good becomes really easy, are people still connecting it to the causes they're supporting? So how do we convert a new generation of organizational champions into loyal and passionate advocates and donors? And what we do is, we think it's important not to discount the smaller acts. If you want millennials to participate in your programs or to attend your events, you need to create small actionable steps that lead them into deeper engagement. Rather than going for complete engagement from the beginning, as you can see in this kind of spectrum of engagement that we've created, you can have them start to like posts on social media, comment on images, share videos, then move towards posting messages on your behalf and taking the next steps of texting their friends, emailing their colleagues, and self-organizing into activities that can help meet the goals of your organization. And so it's something that we refer to as a virtuous cycle of engagement. And how do we move people from being inquisitors, knowing knowing that they need to engage, and then becoming, becoming content consumers, becoming loyal activists and champions, and then ultimately becoming peer influencers for your cause. And I think that organizations, need to relinquish more control in order to enable some of this to happen. So in order for people to truly take on that role of being a peer influencer, a peer agent for change, organizations have to become more comfortable, and more accepting of that. So I think that that leads us into some of the focus on peer influence. We know that millennials are influenced by their peers in almost every facet of their life, from purchasing decisions to all the way to how they engage with organizations and nonprofits. And I think there are small pathways that individuals can take to get their peers to like the cause. But we've seen that that there's an extreme influence that peers and family members and even coworkers have on engaging others and attracting them to their cause. And so again, this is the notion that organizations need to leverage these leaders and peer influencers, moving them from disconnected smaller actions toward more formal group structures. And that's a little bit more of what we're trying to get at here, which is many organizations lead with establishing a young professional group or a junior board, and we think that that is important and there's a place for that, but we think that organizations need to become facilitators of these groups rather than the real leader. That the leaders will naturally emerge among the millennials, and will be able to support these groups of their peers more effectively, perhaps than even an organization can come in at the top level and do so. So that's that's kind of a just a preview of what we're talking about with regard to peer influence. And then the final thing, or the next key message here is, action equals transparent solutions. And one of the themes that we talk about quite a bit throughout the chapters of the book is this notion of tangible transparency. And organizations must provide tangible information for millennials to understand at all levels of the organization. I think millennials are very eager to understand the inner operations of organizations, where their money is going, how it's being used effectively, and then showing the real impact on the ground. And so without this kind of tangible transparency, millennials become overwhelmed and with the kind of the top line messaging, and ultimately we see that leads to inaction. And so we really need to figure out how we help organizations move through that. And I think I'm going to pause there for a moment and pass things off to Derek. We talked just very briefly about the Millennial Engagement Platform that is threaded throughout the book. So he's going to dive a little bit deeper into what are the different elements of that platform and how we've integrated into the various chapters. So Derek, you want to take it?
Thanks, Carrie, so much. So as Carrie mentioned, throughout the book, we have in each one of the chapters talked roughly around service, leadership, involvement, giving, and so on. And in each one of those, we created strategies or suggestive strategies for organizations to use based upon some organizations and some leaders themselves who have implemented such strategies. One of the core things that we continue to come back to is that there is a fundamental foundation that needs to exist before the strategies can be implemented. And that's what we call the Millennial Engagement Platform. The platform itself consists of four primary components. Is that no matter if it's a service program or a solicitation for fundraising, or even a program to try and engage leaders in education program, that we see that there are four fundamental things that need to have sort of these aspects and components of those programs in order to be successful. The first one being what we would call leadership inviting. We continue to see both in research and in discussions in focus groups with millennials that this ability to work directly with, or at least know that a leader within the organization is listening and is available to hear potential solutions and potential ways to address the cause issues, we see that be a very positive thing and actually brings in the millennial much further into the organization's work. In that leadership inviting, what's very interesting about that, if you actually ask a millennial about, do you want this sort of access to leadership, which is some of the research we've done, they will say absolutely. And then if you follow up with, well, have you ever actually called a leader? And some of them will say, well, no, I haven't. And some of them will say, yeah, I've emailed and so forth. But what they usually come back with is that having that ability to connect, though, and knowing that they're willing to listen and be a part of what I'm interested in helping them carve a solution to the issue that they're dealing with means a lot. And it shows and it brings my involvement and engagement higher too as well. The second one, as Carrie mentioned, is tangible transparency, which is really this openness factor of this is how we operate, this is how we raise money, and this is specifically where that money goes. Or this is how we operate, this is how we use human capital, volunteers, this is specifically what they do. And we have discovered that the more tangible and transparent requests are, whether that's for volunteerism, service, leadership, education, whatever that is, that we'll see higher levels of involvement from millennials. The third one is social connectivity. It's hard to ignore this one, but at the same time, it's not just technology driven. Notice we didn't just say social media, because social media can be an aspect and is a tool for social connectivity, but it isn't necessarily social connectivity in itself. What social connectivity is really what Carrie had discussed around this connection to the peer and working in small group volunteerism, aspects that a millennial can do with their friends, family members, and peers. The worst thing we continue to hear from volunteerism studies that we have done on millennials is, let's recruit a group of peer groups of millennials together, bring them to a volunteer experience, split them all up. Hopefully they love what we do, and then they all come back together and leave. Well, it's that social connectivity is part of the aspect of service and part of the aspect of leadership and giving through even peer fundraising. So what we have to look at is how do we make it's almost taking the Facebook motto, which is social by design. How do we create that social by design feature for millennials in the strategies that we have created? And then, of course, the last one is this solutions inspired environment, which in that solutions inspired environment is that we're consistently creating the challenges, the things that millennials can wrap their head around, that tangible challenge or issue that can be addressed. How can I create and be a part of that solution? And whether that solution is, give us we need to figure out the 10 ideas in the next hour to market our message better as an organization. Or how do we connect or communicate with other millennials? We have to look at creating those challenges, quote unquote, for millennials to then develop the solutions so that there's better ownership within what they do. And that's the same thing even on the fundraising side, where we say, we've got a challenge or we're trying to raise money to create these opportunities for the people we serve. We want your thoughts, though, in addition to just your dollars. We're challenging them to help us create those solutions. So in every strategy development or any of the suggestive tactics that we've mentioned in the book, each one of those has an aspect of each one of the top four there components of the platform. We'd also say, too, that the platform is built upon a culture change within the organization. And we call it a build culture change. And it's really, we're creating a better environment for millennials, for them, so that when they're working with organizations. The challenge that we do see, and we don't want to lie or not discuss the issue out there of millennials participating, leaving, departing, not participating again, retention of not only service, but also giving and leadership programming. And at the same time, organizations, everybody putting in all this energy to try and get involvement, and then, it seems to fizzle out. Well, we want to try and curb a little bit of that by creating better cultures and environments when we do involve millennials in things. And so that would be the first one around how can we be unified as an organization? And everybody is going to have to agree that this is something that we want to do to try and bring in our new volunteer base, our new donor base, constituency base, whatever that is. The second one is we have to, and organizations have to continue to learn and be educated about the current environment of millennials and what's happening right now. It's to understand that a lot of them are graduating, half of them not having jobs, and of the ones that do, they're not in skilled jobs that they really want. Well, that's a great piece for organizations to try and create skilled learning opportunities for them. So we have to understand current environments and continue the education process within organizations. The third thing is that we have to understand who are our change makers, but at the same time, who are leaders and followers, and they all have a place in that we still communicate to all of them. I always like it when we'll use an example of an organization saying, oh, we had 50 millennials that attended, so now we've got 50 new volunteers and constituents that might have gone to our event. Well, if that's probably not true. You probably have 5 to 10 really great leaders, or what Carrie was mentioning, moved to that activist role, got a lot of their peers involved. The peers are doing it because of their activist leader friend, not necessarily because they're sold yet that this is the cause they want to help with. So we still have work we got to do, because the next time that they would maybe invite that same group, we might not get the type of result, and that can be challenging. The other one is that we have to lead by engagement. We understand the economic conditions that exist, and leading with money is really tough, because we have so much more stewardship that we have to do to try and help them understand. It's almost like educating them on the cause and the issue. So we're not necessarily becoming a conduit for them. We're just becoming a transactionary organization. So we have to lead with, we need to involve first, rather than try and get things like necessarily like giving money and so on. And then the last one is really determine what success means for you as an organization. And as Carrie had mentioned earlier, is that we live in this micro environment. So, if it's almost like a pyramid, how many people on the lowest level do we want to like our content? how many of those do we want to comment and post to then become moved to that activist role where they're actually spreading messages on our behalf. And obviously, it gets smaller and smaller as we go up that pyramid of involvement and engagement to that higher level of state. And so, but we have to start creating those benchmarks now to help people get to that point and begin to measure what it means for others, because that's a question that Carrie and I often get, and it really is an independent piece for every organization. But creating those benchmarks now will be very important so that we can determine what success will be when we're asking millennials to perform actions for us in some capacity. So, in the book, every chapter we talk about the platform, how it applies to that area, whether it be service involvement, leadership, and the particular strategies that could be used. And again, it's built upon a culture change within the organization that really needs to be constant there. So as we go through here, of course, there's so much more in the book. We could spend a ton more time, and I hope you are interested in taking a look more about the book. You can go to causeforchangebook.com. You can buy it through Amazon as others, or you can buy it through Nook as an Kindle version too, as well, Nook version. Those are all there. If you are part of the media, of course, we can potentially look at getting you some advanced copies. Please connect with us after the session for an advanced copy for media credentialed individuals too as well. So just feel free to communicate with us after that. So we're going to go ahead now and move, because we're on that half hour, as we mentioned. We're going to move now into what to expect with our MCon event this year. And we wanted you, some of our bloggers and media friends, to know a little bit more about that. For some of you who are not familiar, I wanted to bring you up to speed a little bit about the work that we've been doing. And really, Cause for Change is a book as a result of the last 4 years of this work. And so it's natural that we really bring the two together here. The Millennial Impact Project was started roughly around 4 years ago to try and understand some of the triggers and the involvement of of millennials within causes. Originally, the project really was started around to help understand giving, and then moved very quickly to that to talk about overarching engagement with service volunteerism. And in the last year, looking at how communication and mobile is really affecting engagement when it comes to service, leadership, and also giving. In the last 3 to 4 years, this research has really helped not only shape the strategies we've presented in the book, but it also has helped the field to understand the baseline and the preference and habits of millennials. 16,000 millennials later that have been participants in our studies, we've really come to a point now that we're really starting to understand how things can and should be presented to try and get millennials involved and engaged. But we still have a lot more work to do, because, as we mentioned earlier on, is that the generation is consistently evolving over time. And as we look at the Millennial Impact Project, we have really brought it down into three components. One is obviously continuing that research element, and then the Cause for Change obviously is part of that, to take that research and to help also apply some of that research in the book as well. And the second thing is with our partner and supporter, the Case Foundation, has been to help the field understand how to apply it from thought leadership all the way down to tactical. And that's the MCon program. And then lastly, continuing the learning process. As I mentioned, a conference is a one-time experience, but we've got to continue it from there. And that's how we've developed MI Talks. So as I mentioned, over the last 3 years, we've done the research and all the participants that have been a part of it. This year's research is going to be a little different. What we're doing, and thanks to our principal research and insight sponsor, the Case Foundation, for their support, we're going to be looking at two things in this year's research. We want to try and get at the impulsive triggers that spark millennials in that moment to act, whether it's to give because of a friend, or whether it's to also participate and volunteer, or whether it's even to sign up and like content through social networks. We're going to get at those triggers, the things in the moment that inspire them to act. We're also going to be doing a lot of usability testing. We have research partners out there, national research and nonprofit partners, that we pulled a lot of their content that was millennial focused to get all of that into one area. And we're doing usability testing on groups of millennials around the country to see and really view and show how they're interacting with content that they're exposed to that's really targeted toward them. And this will be the first time that we'll take the research that we've done with our 6,000 or 7,000 survey pools and couple that with usability testing to really get at what we're trying to do with some of these triggers. This year, what we're going to be doing is launching that research at the MCon event. Every hour on the hour, we'll have and debut each aspect of our research, so you'll have a chance to get some of that. And of course, as part of the media and bloggers that are a part of this, and also part of our as part of our constituency too, we'll provide in a couple days in advance. We'll give you a media and blogger preview so that you can have a first chance to look at some of that. Of course, we do have media partners that we are working with that have exclusives, but right after those are released, after it's embargoed, anybody can use the research there from that point. So as I mentioned, we'll be debuting that at what we call MCon. MCon is the conference. In the past years, we've just done a virtual element, but this year, so much bigger than that. And we are actually going to have two events, in essence, in the same day. The first event is really for that practitioner, that corporate and that nonprofit practitioner, executive leaders, managers, ones who are involved in volunteerism, fundraising, marketing, to help understand from some of the key thought leaders in the space about how to engage millennials. That conference and that day program will include networking hubs and opportunities for people in person to obviously come together and learn from each other. It'll be a town hall style event live from Indianapolis, and then we'll actually also have hosting parties and viewing parties around the country in 10 major metro areas. In addition to that, anybody can watch it live. That will occur also through our exclusive media partners too as well. They'll be streaming it through their channels. And so we'll go live for anybody to view it too. So throughout the day, we'll have different thought leaders, and they're not just from the nonprofit field. They'll also be from corporations who are engaging millennial employees. And so we can hear from the other end of the spectrum too as well. And then in the evening program, we'll have some celebrities and some philanthropists, which we'll announce at a later date. Within the next week or two, we'll announce who those are, that will be joining us in talking to key stakeholders, not only in the room, but online, about why we need to look at focusing on millennials overall. I shared with you some of the conference agenda here. We break down the day into connecting, involving, and giving, and not just of our time, or not just of our money, but of our time. We'll have representation from some of those major social networks will also be there. And then the evening program will have our time together too as well. As part of the media, you can actually get a free media pass. And if you are a blogger too, you can get a free blogger pass and either attend for free in person, or you can also attend for free online. If you attend even in the online piece and would like to get interviews with some of the speakers and some of the other celebrities and philanthropists, we can coordinate that too with you, as we've got a media and a group that we're working with to coordinate all of that. After MCon, we'll go through a series of MI Talks, which is our 12 monthly discussions, webinars, and online discussions. Some of them will be live on site with some organizations who are doing things and they're seeing some great success. And so some of those individuals will help us really break down concept that was talked about at MCon into actual action and what we can do with that going forward. And so we'll have different webinar content. We'll be debuting different article content. And in addition to that, thanks to our, again, support of the Case Foundation, we'll continue to release different types of the research and different applications of the research as we continue to analyze even further after the MCon date. So I just want to end with a couple dates to keep in mind. February 28th, we have a Cause for Change book launch party. You can actually join as part of the media. You can join, it's live streamed. And so if you haven't received that invitation, please let us know. We'll live stream that. Emily Yu with the Case Foundation will moderate a discussion live with Carrie and myself next week on Thursday. We'll also let the public know about MCon and what's going on, and we'll also give a hint as to some of the speakers that will be there that day. July 18th is MCon. Of course, we'll let you know in advance when that preview is. That will give you the research prior to that day, because we will be releasing it there. And then the monthly MI Talks begin already on August 15th. The Millennial Impact website is where you'll be able to get all the information about MCon. If you probably go today, it will look very different if you go on Tuesday and Wednesday. But on March 1, if you go there, you can apply for media credentials, and we can give you access to all the content, bloggers too as well, all of the content in advance, and we'll get you into our system. And hopefully you'll be able to join us either that day, whether it be in person or online. So I don't know if there's any other questions here, Carrie, But I think that we said that we'd be done close to 20 till, and I think we're there. And so, if there are no questions, like I said, feel free to communicate with us. If you do have any questions, we'll make sure after this you'll get a follow up email that will have not only this presentation for you to take a look at, but we'll also make sure that you'll have the links in our email contacts to either get advanced copies of the book and also to sign up to be media credentials at the various events coming up. We thank you for your time today, and please let us know if there's anything else you would need from us. And I guess, Carrie, on behalf of both of us, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye bye.